What if everything you've been taught about happiness is completely backwards? Here's something that might stop you in your tracks. The people you see smiling through the hardest seasons of their lives, they're not lucky. They're not faking it. They're not living in some bubble where nothing goes wrong. They've simply learned something that nobody ever taught you in school, at home, or anywhere else. Happiness isn't waiting for you at the finish line. It's a skill you can start building today, even if today is really, really hard. And I know what you might be thinking right now. Easy to say. You don't know what I'm dealing with. You're right. I don't. But what I do know is this. The moment you understand how happiness actually works, not how we wish it worked, but how it truly functions inside your mind and body, everything starts to shift. Not magically, not overnight, but steadily, genuinely, and in a way that actually lasts. So stay with me, because what you're about to hear might just be the most important thing you've listened to all year. Introduction: the skill nobody taught you. Let's be honest for a second. Most of us spend our days moving between two mental states, chasing something we don't have yet, or worrying about losing what we do. We tell ourselves that happiness is just around the corner, after the next milestone, the next relationship, the next version of our lives. And when we finally get there, we feel good for a moment, and then we start looking for the next thing. Sound familiar? This isn't a character flaw. It's not weakness or ingratitude. It's actually a deeply human pattern, one rooted in the way your brain was wired thousands of years ago. And understanding that pattern is the first step to breaking free from it. Right now, millions of people are quietly suffering, not because their lives are objectively terrible, but because they're trapped in a cycle of, "I'll be happy when..." They're waiting for circumstances to change before they allow themselves to feel good. But here's the truth that changes everything. External circumstances account for only about 10% of your happiness. The remaining 40% is entirely within your control. That 40%, your thoughts, your daily habits, your internal responses to life, is more than enough to transform how you experience every single day. But most people never access it because they're too busy trying to fix the 10%. This isn't about toxic positivity. It's not about pretending everything is fine when it isn't. It's about understanding the actual science of well-being and using it practically, compassionately, and consistently, even when life feels impossible. By the time you finish this, you'll have a complete toolkit for generating real happiness on demand, not the surface-level kind, the deep, stable, unshakable kind that holds even when the storms come. Let's begin. Chapter 1: The Happiness Trap. That's keeping you stuck. Imagine a treadmill. You're walking on it, working hard, moving your legs. But no matter how fast you go, you never actually get anywhere. You stay in the same spot. That's what psychologists call the hedonic treadmill. And it might be the most important concept you've never heard of. Here's how it works. You get something you've been wanting, a new job, a new apartment, a relationship that finally feels right. And for a little while, you feel genuinely good. But then, and this is the part nobody warns you about, the feeling fades. Your brain adapts. What felt extraordinary last month feels ordinary today. And now you're already looking for the next thing that will finally make you happy. This isn't a personal failure, it's neuroscience. When you achieve or acquire something you want, your brain releases dopamine, the chemical linked to pleasure and reward. But dopamine isn't really about having things, it's about wanting them. The moment you get what you wanted, the dopamine drops, and your brain starts scanning for the next target. It's a loop with no finish line. This is called hedonic adaptation, your brain's remarkable ability to normalize even the most extraordinary experiences. The new car stops feeling new. The exciting city starts feeling like just another place. The promotion becomes just your job. Research on people who won large cash lotteries found something striking. Within a couple of years, their reported happiness levels had returned almost exactly to where they were before the win. Meanwhile, people who experienced serious physical setbacks, people who faced genuinely life-altering health challenges, also returned to surprisingly similar happiness levels, much faster than most people would expect. What this tells us is profound. Your happiness is far less determined by what happens to you than by what happens inside you. Think about the people in your life. You've probably met someone who has every external reason to be happy. Financial security, a loving family, a successful career. And yet they're restless, dissatisfied, quietly miserable. And you've probably also met someone who, by all outward appearances, has it harder. Less money, fewer luxuries, more challenges, and yet they radiate something warm and genuine, a kind of peace you can actually feel when you're around them. The difference isn't luck, it's understanding. Here's another layer to the happiness trap. Most people think happiness means feeling good all the time. Never sad, never anxious, never frustrated. And when those feelings inevitably show up, because they always do, people panic. They think something is wrong with them. They judge themselves for being human. But happiness was never meant to be the absence of difficult emotions. Real happiness is the ability to experience the full range of human feelings without being controlled by them. It's not about eliminating the rain. It's about learning to move through storms without losing yourself in them. You are not your emotions. You're the one noticing them. At the moment you truly feel that distinction, not just understand it intellectually, but feel it, you reclaim an extraordinary amount of power over your inner life. Chapter 2. How your brain creates your emotional reality. Here's something your brain doesn't want you to know. It was never designed to make you happy. It was designed to keep you alive. And those two goals are not the same thing. Deep in your brain lives an ancient alarm system, a cluster of structures wired to constantly scan your environment for threats, social rejection, and uncertainty. In the era of our earliest ancestors, this system was life-saving. If you heard an unexpected noise in the forest, the smart move was to assume danger and react fast. Being wrong about a false alarm cost you some wasted energy. Being wrong about a real one could cost you everything. But here's the problem. That same alarm system is running in your modern life. And it doesn't know the difference between a threatening email from your boss and an actual physical threat. To your nervous system, both feel urgent, both feel dangerous, both trigger the same flood of stress chemicals. This is why so many of us walk around feeling chronically on edge. Not because life is constantly dangerous, but because our ancient brain is constantly overreacting to a world it wasn't built for. This is where something I call emotional alchemy becomes genuinely life-changing. Emotional alchemy is the practice of consciously transforming your emotional state, not by denying what you feel, but by understanding how emotions are created and learning to gently redirect them. It's based on a remarkable insight from modern neuroscience. Your brain doesn't clearly distinguish between what's actually happening and what you vividly imagine. This is why a scary film can make your heart race even though you're safely on your couch. It's why imagining an awkward conversation tomorrow can make you tense right now. Your brain responds to the vivid mental representation almost as if it were real. But here's the gift buried inside that fact. If your brain responds so strongly to your inner world, then you have far more power over your emotional state than you've been led to believe. Every emotion you experience follows a sequence, a thought, often one so fast you barely notice it, triggers a cascade of brain chemistry, which creates a physical sensation in your body, which you then label as an emotion. That emotion generates more thoughts, and those thoughts either spiral upward toward clarity and calm, or downward into anxiety and overwhelm. The key to emotional alchemy is learning to interrupt that spiral and consciously redirect it. Let me give you a real example. Imagine you've been waiting weeks to hear back about something important. A job application, a medical result, a significant decision that affects your family. The silence stretches on. Your automatic thought might be, something's wrong. They would have told me good news quickly. I'm going to be disappointed. I always end up disappointed. That thought chain releases cortisol. Your shoulders tighten. Your sleep suffers. You start snapping at the people you love, not because anything has actually happened, but because your mind has already decided the story. Now imagine choosing a different thought. I don't know the outcome yet. Waiting is uncomfortable, but it doesn't mean anything bad. I can use this time to focus on what I can actually control today. Same situation, completely different internal experience. This isn't wishful thinking. This is emotional alchemy. Taking the raw material of a difficult moment and consciously transforming it through the power of interpretation. And it gets better with practice. Over time, this kind of conscious redirection becomes more automatic. You literally rewire your neural pathways to default toward more grounded, empowered responses. But emotional alchemy isn't just about reframing negative thoughts. It's also about learning to work with your emotions rather than against them. Every emotion, even the uncomfortable ones, carries information. Anger often signals that something you value is being threatened or ignored. Fear often points toward something meaningful that you're hesitant to pursue. Sadness often reveals what truly matters to you. When you stop treating difficult emotions as problems to eliminate and start treating them as messengers carrying important signals, your entire relationship with your inner life changes. Chapter 3. Building Your Daily Happiness Architecture. Most people treat their emotional state the way they treat the weather, something that just happens to them, unpredictable and largely outside their control. But what if you could design your days the way a thoughtful architect designs a home? What if you could create a structure that reliably generates positive emotions, energy, and resilience, regardless of what challenges the day throws at you? This is what I call happiness architecture, the conscious design of your daily environment, routines, and habits in ways that consistently produce well-being from the inside out. And here's what's beautiful about it. You don't have to overhaul your entire life. You just have to understand which inputs create which outputs, and then start adjusting those inputs with intention. Let's start where it matters most, your morning. How you begin your day sets the emotional tone for everything that follows. Most people wake up and immediately reach for their phone, flooding their mind with notifications, news, and other people's urgency before they've even gotten out of bed. Within minutes, their brain has been hijacked by external demands, and they've lost the most precious window of the day. The happiest, most grounded people I've ever studied protect their first hour like it's sacred, because it is. You don't need an elaborate ritual. You need intention. Something as simple as spending 5 minutes writing down 3 specific things you're genuinely grateful for. Setting a single intention for how you want to show up today, and doing something, anything, that moves your body before you open a single app. Gratitude practice, done properly, is one of the most scientifically validated tools for improving mood and emotional resilience. The key word is properly. Most people go through the motions. I'm grateful for my health, my family, my home, without actually feeling anything. That kind of gratitude is pleasant, but not transformative. Real gratitude is specific and felt. Instead of, I'm grateful for my friends, try, I'm grateful that my friend texted me yesterday just to check in, not because she needed anything, just because she was thinking of me. Feel that. Let it land. That's the version of gratitude that changes your brain. Chemistry. The second component of happiness architecture is your environment. Your physical surroundings have a direct, measurable impact on your mood, and most people completely ignore this. Cluttered, dim, chaotic spaces create cluttered, anxious mental states. Clean, light-filled, intentionally arranged spaces support clarity, calm, and creativity. You don't need money to do this. You need awareness. Open the curtains, clear the surface you work at, add 1 plant. Remove 3 things that make you feel heavy every time you look at them. Even small changes here create real shifts. Third, movement. Your body and mind are not separate systems. They are one integrated system. When you move your body with energy and intention, even for just 10 minutes, you change your brain chemistry. You release endorphins and serotonin. You reduce cortisol. You literally create the conditions for positive emotions to arise naturally. This is why exercise consistently outperforms many other interventions for managing low mood and anxiety, not because it distracts you, but because it biologically shifts your internal state. Fourth, your mental diet. Just as what you eat affects your physical energy, what you consume mentally affects your emotional state. A constant diet of alarming news, comparison-triggering social media, and conversations filled with complaint and criticism is the mental equivalent of eating junk food for every meal. You wouldn't be surprised to feel sluggish and unwell. The same principle applies to your mind. Happy, grounded people are intentional about what they allow into their mental space. They choose inputs that educate, inspire, or genuinely entertain. They limit exposure to content that consistently leaves them feeling anxious, envious, or depleted. Fifth, connection. One of the most consistent findings across decades of well-being research is that the quality of your relationships is the single strongest predictor of long-term happiness. Not wealth, not career success, not any achievement or possession. Relationships. But not just any relationships, the right ones. Deep, mutual, authentic connections where you feel genuinely seen and supported. Designing your social life with the same intentionality you bring to your morning routine is one of the most powerful investments you can make in your happiness. Chapter 4. The Gratitude Revolution. If I could hand you just one tool, one practice that would create real, lasting changes in how you experience your life, it would be gratitude, not the polite surface-level kind, the deep, revolutionary kind that literally rewires your brain. Here's what most people don't understand about gratitude. It's not just a nice feeling, it's a neurological intervention. When you practice genuine gratitude consistently, you're physically changing the structure and function of your brain in ways that support happiness, resilience, and even physical health. Studies show that people who maintain regular gratitude practices experience significantly higher levels of positive emotion, better sleep quality, stronger immune function, and greater capacity to cope with difficulty. These aren't small effects. They show up consistently across different populations, different cultures, and different life circumstances. And the most remarkable part? These changes begin showing up within just a few weeks of consistent practice. Here's why. Your brain has a natural negativity bias, a tendency to notice, remember, and dwell on threats, problems, and disappointments far more readily than it notices good things. This bias kept your ancestors alive, but in your modern life, it's quietly draining your joy. Gratitude is the conscious antidote to that bias. Every time you deliberately look for something to appreciate, you're training your brain's attention, teaching it to notice what's working alongside what isn't. Over time, this becomes automatic. You start spotting goodness without having to remind yourself to look. This is the law of what neuroscientists call experience-dependent plasticity. The pathways in your brain that you use most frequently become stronger. The ones you neglect weaken. When you consistently practice gratitude, the neural circuits associated with positive awareness literally grow stronger. Gratitude becomes your brain's default setting. But most people practice it wrong and wonder why they don't see results. The mistake is going broad and automatic. I'm grateful for my health, my family, my home. These are real things to appreciate, but when you rattle them off without feeling anything, you're not actually practicing gratitude. You're reciting a list. Try this instead. Get specific. Get granular. Get real. Think about a moment from the past 24 hours, however small, that had something genuinely good in it. Maybe a stranger held the door. Maybe your coffee was exactly right this morning. Maybe someone you care about sent you a voice message, and just hearing their voice made something in you relax. Sit with that. Feel the appreciation in your body, not just your head. That's the version that changes you. Another powerful technique is what I call contrast appreciation, pausing to imagine what your life would look like without something you currently take for granted. Not in a dark, anxious way, but in a way that makes the ordinary suddenly feel extraordinary. The fact that you can read these words, that your heart is beating right now without you having to think about it, that somewhere in your world there's at least one person who would genuinely miss you if you were gone. When you practice gratitude for challenges, and yes, this is advanced, but it's also the most powerful, you become genuinely unstoppable, because every setback contains something, a lesson, a redirection, a revelation about what matters. When you can look at a hard season and find something real to be grateful for within it, you've transformed suffering into wisdom. And wisdom, unlike circumstances, can never be taken from you. Chapter 5. Mastering the voice in your head. Right now, as you're listening to these words, there's another voice running in your mind. It's commenting on what you're hearing. It's thinking about what you need to do later. It's revisiting something that happened yesterday. It might even be judging itself for not focusing better. That voice, your inner dialogue, is the most powerful force shaping your happiness or your misery. And, for most of us, it's not particularly kind. Research suggests the average person generates somewhere between 60,000 and 80,000 thoughts per day. The majority of those thoughts are negative, and the vast majority are repetitive. The same loops, the same worries, the same self-criticisms playing on an endless cycle. Your mind, left to its own devices, becomes a broken record of the stories that hurt you most. But here's the insight that changes everything. That voice is not you. You are the one listening to it. Think about that for a moment. If you were your thoughts, who would be observing them? If you were completely identical to every thought that passed through your mind, how could you ever disagree with one? The very fact that you can notice a thought, that you can step back and say, wait, is that actually true? Proves that there is a deeper awareness in you that exists beyond the mental chatter. This distinction is the beginning of mental freedom. When you stop identifying with every thought your mind generates and start observing them instead, you gain something extraordinary. The power to choose which thoughts to engage with and which to let pass. You become the director of your mental experience, rather than a passenger being dragged wherever it goes. The first step is simply awareness. Most people are so immersed in their thinking that they don't even realize they're thinking. They mistake their thoughts for reality. They take their inner critic's commentary as fact. Developing the habit of noticing your thoughts, oh, there's that story again. There's the voice that says, I'm not enough, creates just enough distance to stop automatically believing everything you think. The second step is questioning. Thoughts are not facts. They're interpretations shaped by past experiences, old fears, and conditioning that may no longer serve you. Before you believe a painful thought, ask, is this actually true? Can I be absolutely certain? What would my life feel like if I didn't believe this? Often, the most painful thoughts we carry are the ones we've never once stopped to question. The third step is conscious redirection. Once you've created space between yourself and an unhelpful thought, you can gently choose a different one, not a false one, not toxic positivity, but a more accurate, more empowering interpretation of the same reality. Instead of, I always mess things up, try, I'm still learning and every mistake is teaching me something. Instead of, nobody really cares about me, try, there are people in my life who care, even if I can't always feel it right now. Your brain has something called a reticular activating system, a filter that unconsciously scans your environment for evidence of whatever you believe most strongly. If you believe you're unlucky, your brain will find proof everywhere. If you believe you're capable and worthy of good things, it will find evidence of that too. The stories you tell yourself don't just describe your life, they actively shape it. This is why mastering your inner dialogue isn't a luxury. It's foundational. It's the ground everything else is built on. Chapter 6, The Relationship Code That Changes Everything. Let me tell you something that might feel a little uncomfortable at first. But stick with me, because it's one of the most freeing things you'll ever hear. You cannot be consistently happy alone, not because you're weak or needy, but because you are, at your core, a social creature. Your nervous system was literally built for connection. The warmth you feel when someone truly sees you, the safety you feel when someone has your back, the joy you feel when you're laughing with someone you love, these aren't extras, they're essentials. Decades of research into what makes people genuinely thrive, not just survive, but truly flourish, consistently points to the same answer. Not income, not status, not any achievement or possession. The quality of your relationships is the single strongest predictor of long-term happiness and health. Full stop. And yet most people are quietly terrible at relationships. Not because they don't care, but because nobody ever taught them how. They approach connection with the wrong foundation, trying to get love rather than give it, trying to be understood rather than to understand, trying to change the people around them rather than accepting them and themselves more fully. Here's the relationship code that actually works, and it starts somewhere unexpected. It starts with you. You cannot pour from an empty cup. If you don't have a genuinely loving relationship with yourself, if your inner voice is mostly critical, if your self-worth depends on other people's approval, if you're constantly trying to earn your place in people's lives, you will bring that hunger into every relationship you have. And that hunger, however understandable, pushes people away. Self-love isn't arrogance. It's not thinking you're better than anyone else. It's treating yourself with the same basic kindness and understanding you'd offer a close friend who was struggling. It's speaking to yourself with encouragement rather than contempt. It's setting limits that protect your well-being, not because you're selfish, but because you matter too. When you genuinely like and care for yourself, you show up in relationships differently. You're not desperately seeking validation. You're not terrified of rejection. You're not performing a version of yourself you think people will approve of. You're simply present, and that quality of presence is magnetic. The second element of the relationship code is radical acceptance. This one is hard, but it's transformative. Most relationship pain comes from trying to change people. You love your partner, but if they would just be this way instead of that way, everything would be better. You love your sibling, But why do they keep making those choices? You care about your friend, but why can't they see what you see? Here's the truth. Trying to change the people you love doesn't work. And more importantly, it communicates something damaging, that they're not enough as they are, that your love is conditional on their becoming different. Radical acceptance means choosing to love people as they actually are right now, not as you hope they'll become, not as they used to be, not as they could be, if they just listened to you. This doesn't mean tolerating genuinely harmful behavior. That's where healthy limits come in. But it means releasing the exhausting project of trying to fix, improve, or reshape the people around you. When people feel genuinely accepted, not just tolerated, but truly accepted, something extraordinary happens. They relax, they open up, they feel safe. And paradoxically, that environment is far more likely to support real growth than constant pressure ever could. The third element is presence over performance. In a world where everyone is half listening while scrolling through their phone, the gift of your full attention is genuinely rare. When you sit with someone and actually listen, not preparing your response, not waiting for your turn, not mentally somewhere else, people feel it. They feel seen. They feel valued. They feel connected. And connection is what generates the deepest, most durable kind of happiness. Finally, gratitude and appreciation in your relationships. We've talked about gratitude as a personal practice, but its power doubles when you direct it outward. Most people take the people they love most for granted. The familiarity that comes with closeness can make us stop noticing what's wonderful about someone. We notice their flaws and forget their gifts. Make it a practice to tell people what you appreciate about them. Specifically, genuinely. Not just, "You're great," but "The way you checked on me last week without me even asking meant everything." That kind of appreciation doesn't just make the other person feel good. It rewires your brain to notice more of what's wonderful about the people in your life. Chapter 7. Your body is talking. Are you listening? Here's a question most people never think to ask. What if the fastest way to change how you feel isn't through your mind at all, but through your body? We've been taught to think of mental and physical health as two separate things. But they're not. They're one deeply integrated system, constantly sending signals back and forth. And when you understand that, you gain access to some of the most immediate powerful tools for shifting your emotional state that exist. Let's start with something simple. Posture. Right now, wherever you are, notice how you're holding your body. Are your shoulders rounded forward? Is your chin dropped? Is your chest collapsed? Because here's what the research shows. The way you hold your body doesn't just reflect how you feel. It actually creates how you feel. A social psychologist's research on expansive body postures found that simply standing or sitting in open, upright positions for just 2 minutes produces measurable changes in your hormone levels, increasing the chemicals associated with confidence and decreasing the ones associated with stress. Not metaphorically, chemically. Your brain uses your body as information. When your posture says, "I'm small and defeated," your brain adjusts your emotional state to match. When your posture says, "I'm present, I'm capable, I'm here," your brain adjusts accordingly. So when you're having a hard day, before you try to think your way out of it, stand up, Roll your shoulders back. Take up a little more space. Breathe into your chest. It sounds almost too simple. Try it anyway. Speaking of breathing, this might be the most underrated emotional regulation tool available to you, and it's completely free. Your breath is the only part of your body's automatic functions that you can consciously control, and it has a direct line to your nervous system. When you're anxious or overwhelmed, your breathing becomes shallow and fast, which signals your nervous system to keep the stress response running. When you deliberately slow your breathing down and deepen it, you activate the part of your nervous system responsible for calm, restoration, and clear thinking. Try this. Breathe in for 4 counts, hold for 4, out for 4, hold for 4. Repeat this 4 times. That's 2 minutes. And in those 2 minutes, your body's stress chemistry begins to shift. You're not just calming down. You're biologically creating the conditions for better thinking, better decisions, and better emotional regulation. Movement is medicine for the mind. And this isn't a metaphor. When you exercise, your body releases a cascade of chemicals, including the same neurotransmitters that antidepressant medications are designed to increase. Study after study shows that regular physical movement is as effective as medication for managing mild to moderate low mood, with 0 negative side effects. But you don't need to become an athlete to benefit from this. A 10-minute walk, dancing in your kitchen to one song you love, 10 jumping jacks when you feel stuck. The goal isn't fitness. The goal is shifting your internal chemistry, and even small movement does that. There's also the question of sleep, which most people treat as negotiable, but is actually foundational. When you're sleep deprived, your brain's threat detection system becomes hyperactive, while your capacity for rational thinking becomes impaired. Everything feels harder. Small problems feel enormous. You're more reactive, more irritable, more emotionally fragile, not because something is wrong with you, but because your brain literally cannot regulate itself properly without adequate rest. Quality sleep isn't laziness. It's the foundation your emotional resilience is built on. Protect it. And then there's what you eat. Your gut produces the majority of your body's serotonin, the neurotransmitter most associated with mood stability, calm, and well-being. The health of your digestive system directly affects your mental and emotional health. A diet high in processed foods and refined sugar doesn't just affect your body. It destabilizes your mood, clouds your thinking, and makes emotional regulation harder. This doesn't mean you need a perfect diet. It means paying enough attention to notice. How do I feel after I eat this? What kind of energy does this food give me? Small, consistent shifts in your nutrition can create surprisingly significant improvements in your daily emotional experience. Your body is always talking to you. Tiredness, tension, restlessness, that familiar heaviness in your chest, these are messages. When you learn to listen and respond with movement, breath, rest, nourishment, you stop trying to think your way to happiness and start embodying it instead. Chapter 8. Finding Meaning When Life Falls Apart. There's a story about a psychiatrist who survived one of the darkest chapters in human history, the Nazi concentration camps of World War II. He lost nearly everything: his home, his work, members of his family, his freedom. And yet, in the midst of unimaginable suffering, he observed something that changed the course of psychological science. The people who survived, not just physically, but who maintained their humanity, their dignity, their inner life, were not necessarily the strongest or the healthiest. They were the ones who had found a reason to survive, a purpose that made the suffering meaningful, a future they were living toward, even in the darkest present. His conclusion, which he later wrote about in one of the most important books of the 20th century, was this: you can take almost everything from a human being, but you cannot take their freedom to choose how they respond to what happens to them. That insight is the heart of this chapter. Meaning is not something life hands you. It's something you create. And the ability to create meaning from any experience, especially painful ones, is one of the most powerful tools for maintaining happiness when life is genuinely hard. Meaning comes from three primary sources. The first is purpose, having something worth moving toward. A reason to get up in the morning that feels bigger than just getting through the day. Purpose doesn't have to be dramatic or world-changing. It might be raising your children with intention and love, building something with your hands, being the kind of friend who shows up, creating art that only you could make. The key is that it connects you to something beyond your immediate comfort or survival. Many people struggle to find their purpose because they're waiting to feel passionate about it before they start. But purpose is rarely discovered through contemplation alone. It's discovered through action, through trying things, paying attention to what energizes you, and noticing where your natural gifts intersect with genuine need. The second source of meaning is significance, the sense that your existence matters, that you make a difference in someone's world. This doesn't require fame or recognition. It requires genuine contribution. The colleague you encouraged on a hard day. The neighbor whose life is a little warmer because you exist. The child who feels safe because you show up. One of the most reliable ways to create a sense of significance is through service. When you focus outward on what you can give, contribute, offer, you generate a kind of deep satisfaction that no amount of self-focused striving can produce. This is one of the great paradoxes of happiness. The more you pursue it for yourself alone, the more it eludes you. The more you direct your energy toward others, the more naturally it arises within you. The third source is growth, the ongoing process of becoming. Humans are not designed to be static. We are designed to learn, evolve, and expand throughout our lives. When you're actively growing, developing a new skill, working through a challenge, becoming more of who you want to be, you feel alive in a way that comfort alone never produces. This is why difficulties, as painful as they are, can become some of the most meaningful chapters of your life. Not because suffering is good, but because what you do with suffering, the strength you build, the wisdom you extract, the compassion you develop, can transform even the hardest experiences into something that matters. Research on post-traumatic growth consistently finds that many people who go through significant adversity don't just recover to where they were before. They emerge stronger, with deeper relationships, greater appreciation for life, clearer values, and a sense of personal resilience they never knew they had. You don't have to be grateful for the hard thing, but you can choose to be intentional about what you do with it. Chapter 9. Turning difficult emotions into your greatest strength. Most people treat their uncomfortable emotions like uninvited guests at a party, something to be managed, suppressed, distracted from, or apologized for. We live in a culture that celebrates being fine, being positive, keeping it together. And so we develop elaborate strategies to avoid feeling the things that feel too big or too dark or too messy. But here's what nobody tells you. The emotions you avoid don't disappear. They just go underground. Unprocessed anger becomes chronic resentment. Avoided grief becomes a low-level sadness that follows you everywhere. Suppressed fear becomes anxiety that seems to have no clear cause. What you refuse to feel doesn't leave. It just finds other ways to show up in your life. I want to offer you a different relationship with your difficult emotions. One I think of as emotional aikido, borrowing from the Japanese martial art that teaches you to redirect an opponent's energy rather than meeting force with force. In emotional aikido, you don't fight your feelings. You don't suppress them or let them run the show either. You learn to work with them, to feel them fully, understand what they're trying to tell you, and use that energy constructively. Let's start with anger, one of the most misunderstood emotions we carry. Anger is not the problem. Anger is information. It shows up when something you value is being violated, your limits, your dignity, your sense of fairness. It carries energy, real, potent, usable energy. The question is never, how do I get rid of this anger? It's what is this anger pointing me toward, and how can I use its energy constructively? Some of the most important personal transformations begin with anger at an unacceptable situation. Some of the most meaningful actions people take in their lives, standing up for themselves, leaving something harmful behind, creating something new, are powered by anger that was honored rather than suppressed. The practice is this: when anger arises, don't immediately act on it and don't immediately stuff it down. Feel it. Notice where it lives in your body, the heat in your chest, the tension in your jaw. Breathe into it. Let it peak and naturally begin to soften. And then, from that slightly calmer place, ask, what does this anger want me to do? What change is it asking for? Fear is perhaps the emotion most people spend their lives trying to avoid. And in doing so, they inadvertently avoid everything meaningful too. Fear shows up most intensely around the things that matter most. The relationship worth risking vulnerability for. The creative work worth showing to the world. The conversation that could change everything. Fear isn't a sign to stop. Often, it's a sign that you're standing at the edge of something important. Here's something remarkable from psychological research. Fear and excitement produce almost identical physical responses in the body. Elevated heart rate, heightened awareness, energy flooding your system. The physical sensation is nearly the same. The only difference is the story you attach to it. When you feel that surge before something important, instead of telling yourself, I'm terrified, try saying, I'm excited. Not as a denial of what you're feeling, but as a reframe of what it means. Studies show that this simple shift, anxiety reappraisal, measurably improves performance, reduces avoidance, and helps people take more meaningful risks. Sadness is the emotion our culture is perhaps least comfortable with, and the one we lose the most by avoiding. Sadness is your psyche processing loss. It's the natural, healthy response to something meaningful ending or being absent. When you let yourself feel it, really feel it, without rushing to fix it or distract from it, it moves through you and completes itself. When you avoid it, it stagnates. It becomes a weight you carry long after the original loss. There's also something else sadness does that nothing else can. It deepens you. People who have genuinely sat with their own grief tend to develop a quality of empathy and emotional intelligence that those who've avoided it simply don't have. They can sit with someone else's pain without flinching. They know that darkness passes. They've been there and come back. The practice of emotional Aikido comes down to 3 simple principles. Feel fully. Emotions need to move through you, not be stopped at the door. Separate the feeling from the story. You can feel afraid without the story that you're in danger. You can feel sad without the story that things will never get better. Find the gift. Ask what each emotion is trying to protect, teach, or motivate. Every difficult feeling is, at its core, trying to help you in some way. When you learn to work with your emotions instead of against them, you stop losing energy in the battle against your own inner life. And you start using that energy to actually build the one you want. Chapter 10. The Biology of Feeling Good. Here's something that might surprise you. Happiness isn't just a mindset. It's also a biological state. And when you ignore the physical foundations of your well-being, you're essentially trying to build a house on sand. You can work on your thoughts, your habits, your relationships, and all of that matters enormously. But if your brain chemistry is depleted, your hormones are dysregulated, and your nervous system is constantly in emergency mode, you're swimming upstream every single day. The good news is that your biology is far more responsive to your choices than most people realize. Let's start with the one thing that affects everything else: sleep. When sleep researchers study what happens inside the brain during deep, quality rest, the findings are remarkable. Your brain doesn't just pause while you sleep. It activates a kind of internal cleaning system that flushes out toxic waste products that accumulate during your waking hours. It consolidates memories, processes emotions, and restores the chemical balance that makes regulated, resilient emotional functioning possible. When you're sleep-deprived, even by just an hour or 2 consistently, your brain's threat detection system becomes hyperactive. Your capacity for rational, calm thinking diminishes. Everyday frustrations feel like genuine crises. You're more reactive, less creative, less able to access the emotional steadiness you've been working to build. Sleep deprivation doesn't just make you tired, it makes everything harder in ways you often don't even notice, because you've adapted to feeling that way. Most adults need between 7 and 9 hours of quality sleep, not as a luxury, as a biological requirement for optimal emotional function. Protecting your sleep by keeping a consistent schedule, limiting screen exposure in the evening, and creating an environment that supports real rest is one of the highest return investments you can make in your daily happiness. Next, what you eat. Your gut produces the vast majority of your body's serotonin, the neurotransmitter most associated with mood stability, emotional calm, and a general sense that things are okay. The health of your digestive system and the diversity of your gut microbiome directly influence how much of this chemistry is available to your brain. A diet built primarily on processed foods, refined sugar, and artificial ingredients doesn't just affect your waistline. It creates chemical instability in your brain. Blood sugar spikes and crashes produce mood swings that feel emotional, but are actually metabolic. Nutritional deficiencies, particularly in omega-3 fatty acids, B vitamins, and magnesium, are strongly associated with anxiety and low mood. Meanwhile, whole foods, fermented foods that support gut health, and meals that provide steady, sustained energy create the biological conditions in which positive emotions can arise more naturally and consistently. This doesn't require a perfect diet or obsessive tracking. It requires paying enough attention to notice the connection between what you consume and how you feel, and making gradual, sustainable shifts in the direction of nourishment. Then there's movement, which we touched on earlier, but deserves deeper attention here. When you exercise, your body produces a protein called BDNF, brain-derived neurotrophic factor, sometimes described as fertilizer for your brain. BDNF supports the growth and maintenance of brain cells, strengthens existing neural connections, and directly supports the kind of emotional regulation and cognitive flexibility that resilient, happy people demonstrate. Exercise also increases endorphins, dopamine, and serotonin simultaneously, the exact combination that antidepressant medications attempt to replicate chemically. The type of movement matters less than the consistency. Walking, dancing, swimming, lifting, cycling, whatever you will actually do regularly is infinitely more valuable than the perfect workout you never get around to. Even 20 to 30 minutes most days creates measurable improvements in mood, resilience, and overall life satisfaction. Sunlight is another biological input most people underestimate. Morning light exposure helps regulate your circadian rhythm, the internal clock that governs your sleep-wake cycle, hormone production, and mood. Vitamin D, produced through skin exposure to sunlight, plays a significant role in emotional regulation. Deficiency in vitamin D is strongly associated with depressive symptoms, particularly in the darker months of the year. Even 15 minutes of morning sunlight can shift your biological state in meaningful ways. Finally, breath and cold. Conscious breathing practices, slowing your exhale, practicing box breathing, or simply taking 3 deep, deliberate breaths before a challenging moment, directly regulate your nervous system. Cold. Exposure, whether through cold showers or simply ending a warm shower with 30 seconds of cold water, has been shown to increase norepinephrine levels significantly, a neurotransmitter associated with focus, mood, and resilience. None of these are dramatic interventions, but together they create a biological foundation that makes everything else you're building far more stable and sustainable. When your brain has what it needs, rest, nourishment, movement, light, happiness stops being something you have to force and starts being something that arises naturally. Chapter 11. Building resilience that actually holds life will test you, not might, will. There will be seasons that bring you to your knees, loss, failure, betrayal, illness, uncertainty that stretches on longer than you thought you could endure. This isn't pessimism, it's honesty. And the most compassionate thing I can tell you is this: the goal isn't to avoid those seasons. The goal is to become someone who can move through them without losing themselves. That capacity is called resilience. And like happiness, it is not a fixed trait you either have or don't. It's a skill. It's built gradually through practice and intention. And once it's genuinely yours, it changes your entire relationship with difficulty. Most people misunderstand resilience. They think it means being tough, emotionless, unflinching, unaffected by hard things. But that kind of toughness is actually fragility in disguise. People who suppress their responses to pain don't become stronger. They become brittle. Real resilience looks more like a tree in a storm. It bends, sometimes dramatically, but its roots hold. It feels the wind fully and doesn't pretend the storm isn't happening. And when the storm passes, it's still standing. Often, it's grown stronger in the places where it was stressed. The foundation of genuine resilience is something psychologists call cognitive flexibility, the ability to consider multiple interpretations of a difficult situation rather than locking immediately into the most threatening one. Rigid thinking leads to rigid responses. Flexible thinking allows you to find possibilities in obstacles, lessons in setbacks, and pathways forward even when the one you planned has closed. When something painful happens, your first interpretation is rarely the most accurate or the most useful one. It's usually the most fear-based one, the one your nervous system generated in the first half second to protect you. Resilient people have learned to pause, to ask, what else might this mean? What opportunities could this create that I can't see yet? What is this experience asking me to develop? These questions don't deny the difficulty. They expand your field of vision beyond it. Another cornerstone of resilience is what researchers call realistic optimism. And this is importantly different from blind positivity. Realistic optimism means seeing your situation clearly, including the hard parts, while genuinely believing in your capacity to navigate it. It's not everything will be fine as a reflexive defense. It's this is genuinely hard, and I have handled hard things before, and I will find a way through this too. That kind of optimism is built on evidence. Every time you've faced something difficult and survived it, every time you felt like you couldn't continue and then somehow did, you deposited something into an internal account of self-trust. Over time, that account grows, and it becomes the ground of your resilience. Distress tolerance is another skill worth building deliberately. This is the capacity to experience difficult emotions without immediately needing to escape them, without reaching for a distraction, a substance, an argument, or any of the other ways we've learned to exit discomfort as fast as possible. Building distress tolerance doesn't mean seeking out suffering. It means practicing staying present with discomfort in small doses, sitting with a difficult feeling for a few extra minutes before trying to fix it, having a hard conversation you've been avoiding, staying in a challenging situation long enough to find your footing. Each time you do, you prove to yourself that difficult feelings are survivable, that you are more capable than your anxiety tells you. And then there's the most advanced level of resilience, what psychologists call post-traumatic growth. Research consistently shows that many people who go through significant adversity don't just return to who they were before. They emerge genuinely transformed, with deeper values, stronger relationships, greater appreciation for life, and a quiet confidence in themselves that they couldn't have developed any other way. They don't become happy despite what they went through. In a real sense, they become more fully themselves because of how they moved through it. This doesn't mean you should be grateful for every painful thing that happens to you. It means that whatever difficult thing you're carrying right now contains something, a lesson, a strength that's being forged, a version of you that is more capable, more compassionate, more real than the version that existed before the difficulty began. You don't have to see it yet. You just have to stay in the process. Chapter 12. Habits that make happiness automatic. Your daily life is largely a collection of habits, patterns of thought and behavior that run almost automatically beneath the level of conscious decision. And here's the thing about habits. They don't care whether they're serving you or not. They just run. Which means that if you leave your habits to chance, you're essentially leaving your happiness to chance. But when you design your habits with intention, when you build small, consistent practices that generate positive emotions and reinforce your sense of agency and purpose, happiness stops being something you have to chase and becomes something that simply happens as a natural byproduct of how you live. The science of habit formation comes down to a simple loop. Trigger, routine, reward. A cue in your environment triggers a behavior, the behavior produces a reward, and over time the brain automates the whole sequence to save energy. This is why habits feel effortless once they're established. Your brain has essentially outsourced that behavior to autopilot. The key to building happiness habits is designing them so that the reward is immediate and intrinsic, meaning it feels good right now, not just in theory or in the future. Habits built on distant rewards, exercising to look better in 6 months, meditating to become calmer eventually, rarely stick. Habits that feel genuinely rewarding in the moment become part of your identity with surprising speed. Your morning is the most powerful canvas you have. The first 30 to 60 minutes of your day set the neurological tone for everything that follows. Most people give this window away immediately, to their phone, to the news, to other people's urgency, before they've even fully woken up. Instead, protect it. It doesn't need to be elaborate. 3 minutes of genuine, specific gratitude before you look at any screen. One clear intention, not a to-do, but a way of being you want to bring to the day. 5 minutes of movement. These 3 tiny practices, done consistently, create a morning that belongs to you and a brain that enters the day primed for clarity, purpose, and positive engagement rather than reactivity. Throughout your day, micro-habits create continuous, cumulative shifts in your emotional state. These are behaviors that take under 2 minutes but have outsized effects. A few deep breaths before a difficult conversation. A genuine compliment offered to someone without any agenda. Stepping outside for 5 minutes in the middle of a long work stretch. Putting your phone in another room during meals. None of these are dramatic. All of them are real. There's a concept called habit stacking, attaching a new practice to an existing one that's already firmly in place. After I make my morning coffee, I will write one thing I'm grateful for. After I sit down at my desk, I will take 3 deep breaths before opening my email. The existing habit becomes the trigger for the new one, making it far easier to remember and far more likely to stick. Your environment is equally important. The research on behavioral design shows clearly that the easiest habits to build are the ones your environment makes automatic. And the easiest habits to break are the ones your environment makes effortless. Put water where you'll see it. Put your journal on your pillow. Remove the apps that consistently leave you feeling worse from your home screen. Lay out your exercise clothes the night before. Design your environment to work for the person you're trying to become, not against them. Evening habits deserve as much attention as morning ones. The way you close your day shapes how you sleep, and how you sleep shapes everything. A simple evening practice, 3 questions asked quietly before sleep. What went well today? What did I learn? What am I grateful for? Ends the day on a note of reflection and appreciation rather than unfinished rumination. It trains your brain to consolidate positive experiences alongside the difficult ones. The most important principle of all, start smaller than you think you need to. The person who does 5 push-ups every morning without fail will, over time, dramatically outlast the person who commits to an intense daily workout and burns out after 2 weeks. Consistency at a small scale builds identity. And identity, I am someone who moves their body. I am someone who practices gratitude. I am someone who protects their sleep, is what makes habits permanent. Chapter 13 to 14, Protecting Your Energy and Living in the Present. You've been doing the work, building new habits, shifting your inner dialogue, tending to your relationships, caring for your body. And then you spend an hour with a particular person and feel like you've been completely hollowed out. Sound familiar? The truth is that not all people add to your life. Some consistently, reliably drain it. Not necessarily because they're bad people, often they're struggling deeply themselves, but because their patterns pull heavily on your emotional resources without offering much in return. Chronic complaining, constant drama, endless victimhood without any movement toward change, manipulation disguised as need. Learning to recognize these patterns and protect your energy from them isn't selfishness. It's stewardship of the one resource that makes everything else possible. You can't change other people, but you can change how much access they have to your time, attention, and emotional space. Clear, kind, consistent limits are not walls. They're guidelines. They communicate what you will and won't engage with, and they create the conditions for relationships that are genuinely mutual rather than chronically one-sided. Pay attention to how you feel after spending time with different people. Do you feel lighter or heavier, energized or depleted, clearer or more confused about yourself? Your body knows things your mind sometimes argues with. Trust those signals and surround yourself as deliberately and actively as you can with people who add to your life, people who challenge you thoughtfully, celebrate you genuinely, show up without being asked, and make you feel more like yourself rather than less. Now, perhaps the most quietly radical idea in this entire book. The present moment is the only place happiness can actually be experienced. Not the future, where things might finally be better. Not the past, where they may once have been good. Now, this breath, this moment, this particular configuration of your life exactly as it is. Research on mind wandering, the mental habit of drifting away from what's actually happening into thoughts about the past or future, consistently shows that these episodes are associated with lower reported happiness, even when the content of the wandering is pleasant. Simply put, when your mind is somewhere else, you miss your life. Present moment awareness, mindfulness, is not about emptying your mind or achieving some blissful state of constant serenity. It's simply about being here, noticing what's actually happening in your body, in your environment, in your relationships, without getting lost in mental commentary about it. Your breath is always the most direct doorway into the present. When you notice your mind has wandered into worry about tomorrow or regret about last month, you don't need to judge yourself. You simply return, right here, right now, breathing. This practice, repeated thousands of times, builds something real, the ability to access presence when you most need it. When you're with someone you love, when you're doing work that matters, when life is genuinely beautiful and you don't want to miss it because your mind is somewhere else entirely. There's something else present moment awareness reveals. Most of what we call suffering lies not in present reality, but in our thoughts about present reality. Right now, in this moment, you are breathing. Your heart is beating. You have enough. Most of the fear and pain you carry is a projection, something your mind is doing to the future or something it's doing with the past. When you return to the actual present moment, you often find that right now, you are more okay than your thinking suggested. Chapter 15. Coming Home to Yourself, Your Unshakable Core. We've covered a tremendous amount of ground together: neuroscience and habit formation, emotional regulation and biological optimization, the power of gratitude, the wisdom of difficult emotions, the importance of relationships and meaning and mourning, routines, but all of it, every single practice, every tool, every insight, points toward the same truth, a truth that is, in the end, beautifully simple. The happiness you've been searching for has never been somewhere else. It's been here, inside you, waiting to be recognized. Beneath all the noise, the self-criticism and the endless planning, the fear and the comparison, and the exhausting effort to become good enough, successful enough, certain enough, there is something in you that has never been broken. Something steady and quiet that has been present through every hard season of your life, through every failure and every loss, through every moment when you thought you couldn't continue. Call it your core, your true self, pure awareness. Whatever language fits, the thing is real. And every spiritual tradition, every contemplative practice, and increasingly the findings of modern neuroscience point toward the same recognition. You are not your thoughts. You are not your emotions. You are not your circumstances. You are the awareness that observes all of those things. And that awareness has never once been damaged by any of them. This isn't a metaphor. It's an invitation to a genuine shift in how you understand yourself. When you identify with your thoughts, you live at the mercy of whatever your mind produces on any given day. And some days, your mind produces some pretty dark material. When you identify with your circumstances, your inner stability rises and falls with the unpredictable weather of your external life. But when you recognize yourself as the observer, the awareness that watches thoughts come and go, that notices emotions arise and pass, that remains present through every changing season, you have something no external circumstance can take from you, a place to stand, an inner home, an unshakable core. Living from this place doesn't mean becoming detached or indifferent. It doesn't mean nothing affects you, or that you stop caring deeply about the things and people that matter. In fact, it's the opposite. When you're no longer desperately clutching at your sense of self, no longer defending and protecting an identity that feels fragile, you become freer to love fully, engage completely, and be genuinely present in your own life. You stop waiting for life to be perfect before you allow yourself to be happy. You understand that peace isn't the absence of problems. It's the presence of something steady within you, regardless of the problems. You realize that security isn't having everything under control. It's knowing, from real experience, that you can handle whatever comes. Here's what I want you to take from everything we've covered together. The gratitude practices aren't there to manufacture false positivity. They're there to clear away the film of negativity bias so you can see the goodness that's already present in your life. The habit architecture isn't about rigid self-improvement. It's about creating daily conditions that let your natural well-being emerge rather than constantly fighting against yourself. The emotional tools aren't about fixing yourself. They're about befriending yourself, all of yourself, including the parts that are scared or sad or angry or lost. None of this is about becoming a different person. It's about returning to who you actually are beneath all the conditioning and the fear and the stories you've accumulated about why happiness is for other people. People who have it easier, people who are further along, people who haven't made the mistakes you've made. You are not behind. You are not broken. You are not too far gone. You are exactly where you are, which is exactly where this journey begins. Some days you'll feel deeply connected to all of this, steady, clear, genuinely at peace in a way that surprises you. Other days, the old patterns will come roaring back, and you'll feel like you haven't learned anything at all. This is normal. This is the practice. The goal was never perfection. The goal is simply to keep returning to the breath, to the present moment, to the practices that reconnect you with yourself. Because happiness, real happiness, the kind that holds through difficult seasons and ordinary Tuesdays and every complicated chapter in between, was never something outside you waiting to be earned or achieved or discovered. It was always here. It was here on your hardest days, quieter than the pain, but present. It was here in the moments you laughed unexpectedly, in the sunlight that came through the window on a morning when you thought you were too tired to notice beauty. It was here when someone looked at you with genuine care and something in you recognized that you were worth caring about. It has been here your whole life, in you, as you. And now that you know that, now that you have the understanding, the tools, and the compassion for yourself to actually use them, there is nothing stopping you from living it. Not your past, not your circumstances, not the difficulty that might be sitting in your life right now. This is how you be happy every day, even when life is hard. Not by waiting for hard to become easy, but by discovering the part of you that was never as fragile as you feared, and choosing again and again to live from there. Welcome home,